Hello, I'm Nathan P. Butler, author of a Saga on home video and host of From the Star Wars Home Video Library here on YouTube, and this is Star Wars Home Video Year by Year. This time we take a look at 2002. Now, 2002 is notable for many reasons outside of just home video stuff, but there's some pretty big home video stuff going on here, so a lot for us to cover. This, of course, is the year that Attack of the Clones hits theaters. And this will actually be the very first time, aside from the special editions, which are kind of a special case, where we will see a Star Wars film hit home video in the same calendar year that it was in theaters. So yes, we're looking at a lot of Attack of the Clones stuff this time, though not that exclusively. This is the year of Star Wars Celebration 2, the second official Star Wars celebration. And on a much more personal note, this was actually the year that I started podcasting back in the day. Now, I've since retired from it, but I actually released the first episode of my first podcast, Chrono Radio, on the same day that Attack of the Clones was released, because I saw Attack of the Clones at midnight, came home, recorded about it, and I'm embarrassed to say that I think at the time I said that it was probably my favorite Star Wars film up to that point. Don't judge. I was young and naive. That all being said, for context though, let's dive into home video for 2002, because boy is there a lot of it. Remember that last time, one of the things I talked about was that in 2000, they released The Phantom Menace on DVD for the very first time across the world. First Star Wars DVD, lots of great bonus features. It was an important moment, but only in widescreen. Now, if you were in like Japan or the UK or Australia, you were like, hey, cool, widescrreen. That works. If you were in the US, your response was either the same thing or spittle-flecked rage, why isn't there full screen? I want my full screen. Even though, of course, full screen is a substandard way to watch it. Lots of folks back then were still in this mindset that somehow widescreen was inferior because it didn't take up your whole TV screen. The days of 4x3 televisions and widescreen, the bane of the existence of anyone who cared about movies at the time. Well, what Americans want, Americans get sometimes. And yeah, in 2002, 20th Century Fox Home Entertainment decided to sort of answer the call and fix that oversight, which is really probably more of them looking more ahead to the future and being more far-sighted than, you know, the customers were, or just assuming we weren't crazy in the United States. And they released, to go along with this from the previous year, a full-screen version of The Phantom Menace on DVD. So yes, you can now watch Phantom Menace in this cut with the air taxi and everything in a substandard way that at least took up your entire 4x3 television at the time. But this begins a new pattern here where we see gold on widescreen and blue for full screen. Prior to this, there wasn't a lot of examples of color schemes used for that purpose, but for example, in 1997, you had silver for widescreen, gold for full screen. Now we're making gold the widescreen thing and blue as the full screen thing. We will see that color schemes don't really stay consistent throughout this product line. But we now had a full screen copy of Phantom Menace, so in the US at least, you could get either. In other regions, they stuck with just widescreen because they didn't suck like we did. Now, you might remember also that in 2001, we saw this club packaging for Phantom Menace to kind of help prevent theft and whatnot. Generic 20th Century Fox packaging, kind of dark. Well, they did the same thing here when we got the 2002 full screen version of Phantom Menace. Only by then, you had a lighter color scheme to the generic type. So here is the full screen version. Can't really tell up here at the top because it's covered up, but it is the full screen version as it says on this sealed one. I've got another one that's not sealed, but the sealed one makes it clear here. But also, this begins a pattern of actually getting not just the generic anti-theft packaging, but for each new Star Wars film being released to actually get some film-specific packaging here. So here we have Maul down underneath, which is kind of a neat little thing. I've yet to ever see a full screen version of this. This is the widescreen version, which was in this, getting this with no full screen equivalent in film specific packaging. And while we're on the subject of Phantom Menace, I would note that over in Turkey, where they got Turkish dubbed VCDs of Star Wars films over the years, this was when they finally got their VCD of The Phantom Menace, a year later than other regions did. It was released basically alongside Attack of the Clones that year. But yes, you can find a Turkish dubbed VCD of Phantom Menace out there as well. Of course, the big release this year was Attack of the Clones. And of course, with this transition into DVD, there is some question, okay, DVD is sort of meant to be more widescreen, more of the movie lovers' way of watching the movies. So much so that they actually tried to launch in the US with just widescreen for DVD and had to sort of backpedal a full screen this year for Phantom Menace. What about Attack of the Clones? How would they handle it on DVD and on VHS? Presumably DVD would be like Phantom Menace, but what about VHS? The previous year, there were no VHS releases of Phantom Menace to speak of, but the year before that, in 2000, we'd seen a widescreen version and a full screen version in the US, but widescreen was only some kind of special packaging. What about Attack of the Clones? Well, fortunately or unfortunately, the writing was kind of on the wall that VHS was kind of heading out the door in the US, and this is what we got as our only option for Attack of the Clones on VHS in the US. It is a full screen copy. There was no widescreen equivalent in the United States itself. This VHS, which was promoted as a special edition VHS, actually has a bonus feature on it, a little featurette that is found nowhere else within the Attack of the Clones releases. It's a little thing about Star Wars connections with R2-D2 and C-3PO, where basically they're talking about how episodes 1 and 2, of course we haven't seen 3 yet, tie into episodes 4, 5, and 6. So still worth checking out for that bonus feature, even if you were watching the film on DVD. And we would see VHS releases across the world. We have one here from Australia, for example. This one in pretty rough shape here from Finland. Notice this one is widescreen. They did have a widescreen version with that type of cover art here. In Japan, we have this version here. We have a rental version here. In the UK, you have a nice clamshell case again with that gold clamshell once more. And you had a rental version in the UK where, again, just like with Phantom Menace, the rental version is much larger than the retail version. So yes, it is noteworthy there that we did see a widescreen copy among those, just not in the United States. Attack of the Clones on VHS would be the last Star Wars film release on VHS in the United States. That was it. Revenge of the Sith would not get one, and there'd be none in between. Attack of the Clones wraps up that product line that had been going for Star Wars since 1979, with the making of Star Wars coming from Magnetic Video Corporation. But of course, as one format is dying off, another is taking its place, as I call it in the book. It is the rise of DVD, demise of VHS in this period. And Attack of the Clones hit DVD with a presentation similar to what we saw with the Phantom Menace. A film disc with commentary, and then of course we also had a bonus feature disc with a ton of bonus features, some of which were new, some of which were things we would have seen before like trailers, some of which were coming from StarWars.com. A huge array of bonus features. Really something that fans were only now just getting used to because it really hadn't been a thing prior to DVD, except in rare cases, and even the definitive collection couldn't hold a candle to what we were seeing now on DVD. So of course, Attack of the Clones hits DVD, and it hits the same way we just saw with Phantom Menace. There's a widescreen version, but you'll notice here that whereas the gold used to be where the tagline would go, now they were like, oh, now we have to actually denote the format. And on Phantom Menace, they had used that blue bar and put full screen. But all the gold widescreen versions still just said every saga has a beginning. Well, starting with Attack of the Clones, they just put widescreen up there in that top bar instead of a tagline to indicate, yes, this is the widescreen version. To go along with the full screen version in blue, again, matching what they did with the Phantom Menace the same year. So we got full screen and widescreen again. We will see this actually continuing really through 2006 for Star Wars film releases, which is quite a while after the rest of the world had pretty much just ditched full screen for DVD pretty much entirely. Over in Australia, we had another of those cool Easy DVD exclusive versions with their regular version of the DVD release inside. We have the version coming out of Japan. We have the version coming out of the UK. We even have a version here to look at coming out of Turkey. But notice what's in common about all these, and the Australian one that was inside that slipcover. No gold bar. You don't need a gold bar to say widescreen if your only version is widescreen. So yeah, that is an easy way actually to tell, even without looking for something like the ratings markers and whatnot. For example, to see the Japanese version, which from the front looks very much like the US version, to realize it's not from the US because we had to have the bars to tell us what format they were in. Now, the DVD release of Attack of the Clones was also noteworthy, though, because the film had been made digitally. So this is the first digital-to-digital transfer of a movie to DVD, sort of a landmark moment, not just for Star Wars, but for filmmaking in general. Of course, in the US, we also had club variations, anti-theft variations of Attack of the Clones on DVD. So you have a full-screen version in that same type of packaging we saw with that light color 20th Century Fox generic packaging for Phantom Menace full screen. But then widescreen got one as well, just like Phantom Menace had in 2001, but again, by this point they had moved to the lighter packaging, so the widescreen version and full screen versions essentially look the same if you're in the generic packaging here, barring a sticker telling you which one is which. Yes, I just almost dropped it. And you had a widescreen version in film-specific packaging. And yes, I did mention Turkey twice so far. The DVD just now, just as an example of the DVD from a different region, but also that VCD of the Phantom Menace in 2002 that was Turkish dubbed. There is, of course, a Turkish dubbed version of Attack of the Clones as well. They're in the jewel case. If you want something fancier, you could go out of Hong Kong, get their fancy schmancy version of Attack of the Clones on VCD, and another one of those nice little sort of, again, fancier editions here with the slipcover and all. Or if you wanted something with really crappy packaging, you could have gone with Indonesia for yours, which, yes, just like what we saw with Phantom Menace, is just that crappy cardstock over your two jewel cases. And of course, if you're going to do a box set of the Star Wars prequels, you really need to wait until 2005, right? Because then you could package episodes 1, 2, and 3 in a single package. You can maybe do DVD and VHS and have a couple of trilogy sets. That would be awesome, but that is not what they wound up doing. First off, of course, we're not going to see a VHS release of Revenge of the Sith. So without really kind of knowing that was going to be the case, we did get kind of a weird product here that still wound up bringing together the only VHS releases that we got for the prequel trilogy, but still feels like jumping the gun. In 2002, they put out a Saga pack on DVD and on VHS for the prequel trilogy, when it really wasn't the trilogy, of course. It was just the first 2 episodes of that trilogy. And it's not really the Star Wars Saga, because it didn't include the original It was an illogical thing, but they did it anyway. So we have here, from the US, the Star Wars Saga video pack. It is effectively just a slipcover over the full-screen VHS releases of Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones. That's it. Again, though, because it's the US, this technically is a full prequel VHS set, because we never got Revenge of the Sith over here. It's a little weirder in regions that did get Revenge of the Sith on VHS, but you can find, for instance, ones from Australia. Notice the Australian one and the American one are different sizes. Why? Well, again, it is because they put their stuff in clamshell cases, and the clamshells themselves then go inside the slipcover. But even if we grant them the logic with the Saga video pack that there wouldn't be a Revenge of the Sith, so it's kind of a complete product for the prequel VHS releases, that doesn't work when you're talking DVD, because of course we got Revenge of the Sith on DVD, but yes, they did a 2-pack as well, called the Saga DVD pack. And of course, if you're gonna have a substandard trilogy set that's not really a trilogy set, it's just the first 2 films, you really got to go with the substandard version of watching the film too. So yes, in the US, you could get a Saga DVD pack, and the only version was full screen. Woosah. But yeah, your films, I think I'm putting them in the wrong order, but there you go. Hard to tell on the screen that mirrors a lot of times what I'm seeing. But yes, we got one of these, and the UK did as well. Of course, the UK doesn't have to mark it as full screen, because in the UK, there's only the widescreen versions of the freaking films on DVD. Interestingly, even though Revenge of the Sith would get a DVD release in 2005, they didn't put out a trilogy box set for the prequels until 2008. But I guess that kind of fits the pattern, right? We could theoretically have bought all of the original trilogy on VHS as of 1986. But we didn't get a paper-banded set that wasn't even a box set until 1988, or an actual box set in a box until 1990. But either way, doing just the 2 first films and calling it a Saga pack, whether it's video or DVD, is just a little weird. As is probably my obsession with that weirdness. Wait. Nathan here from the near future. Because I realized there was something I didn't mention when initially recording here about Attack of the Clones. Remember what I said about the Phantom Menace? When we see a new Star Wars film hit DVD, at least prior to the Disney era, there will be a new cut of the film released into the wild. In the case of the Phantom Menace in 2001, it had been things with like the air taxi scene and whatnot tweaked. In the case of Attack of the Clones, you had a lot of different versions actually out there in the wild in theaters. You had a digital version, you had a film version, sort of more traditional. You had an IMAX version that was somewhat truncated. Now we have a version being released on home video here that includes an extended scene as one of the tweaks to it. That's probably the most noteworthy thing about it. So Anakin has killed the Tuskens. He confesses to Padme after being so angry about Obi-Wan holding him back. He says, I hate them and all of that. And we have kind of a mixed bag in the way the scene is extended. He slumps to the ground, and then Padme comes over and simply tells him that, hey, to be angry is to be human. So I guess that makes it okay? Or something? We all go a little mad sometimes. Anthony Perkins, Psycho, Billy Loomis, Scream. That was a little meta. But yeah, not a big fan of her sort of waving it away. But at the same time, we also get Anakin acknowledging, I'm a Jedi. I know I'm better than this. Now, the fact that he says he knows he's better than this, as opposed to he should be better than this, has kind of a level of Jedi arrogance to it. But that I could go with. But either way, it's an odd extension to the scene. But yes, we're getting a new version again as we are seeing a Star Wars film premiering on DVD. Now back to me from the past. Aside from those few new releases for Phantom Menace and a lot of releases here for Attack of the Clones across the world, what else did we get in 2002? There were a few noteworthy items here. We got R2-D2 Beneath the Dome. This is kind of a cool little weird parody thing, kind of a true Hollywood story type thing for R2-D2. It's weird. It's a mockumentary, but it did get a DVD release. It was a little harder to find, though, because it was exclusive to Best Buy and Musicland in the US. And we got some new releases of something we've seen recently to wrap up our coverage of that particular product, which is that Best of the Muppet Show that included the episode with Mark Hamill that has a Star Wars parody in it. We had seen a VHS release before. Now Columbia TriStar Home Entertainment is putting out essentially a new edition of the same thing. They did the same with the DVD release from the previous year here, now through Columbia TriStar. And the UK got a version of this with the very, not just best, the very best of the Muppet Show here. With this particular release, including, again, the Mark Hamill episode. There is a compilation on here. The Elton John episode has some stuff on here. So kind of a sort of a different way of presenting it. But again, if you wanted to find that Star Wars specific episode with Mark Hamill on it, there were 4 ways in the US to get it. 2 VHS, 2 DVD, and yes, the UK had a DVD version. Probably a VHS version as well. I just don't have it in the collection here. But definitely DVD right here. So a busy year here for 2002 with lots and lots of stuff to look at. Surely next year would be a big year as well, seeing as how we keep seeing these big years throughout the 2000s. We'll see as we look next time at 2003.